Hey there, weekend story lovers. It's Leo here, ready to dive into another tale that might make you think twice about the decisions we make in life. Today's story is about trust and negotiation, featuring two friends and business partners, Mark and Tom, who nearly let a great opportunity slip through their fingers because of a misunderstanding. Sometimes, even with the best of intentions, things can go sideways if communication breaks down. Stick around after the story, and I'll share a few thoughts on what went well and what didn't. Alright, let's get into it.
Tom and I had been friends for years before we went into business together. We'd always been on the same page, so when we decided to open our small restaurant, it felt like a natural progression. The first few months were tough, but business was growing, and we'd started getting attention from some local food bloggers. That's when we got an offer that could change everything. One Friday morning, I got a call from a guy named Richard, a local investor who was interested in our restaurant. He had heard great things and wanted to meet with us to discuss a potential investment. Tom and I were excited. We had been talking about expanding, but we didn't have the capital to do it ourselves. "This is it," I told Tom later that day. "If Richard invests, we could finally open a second location." Tom agreed, but I could see that something was bothering him.
It wasn't that I didn't want the investment. I did. I knew how much it could help us grow. But part of me was worried that we'd be giving up too much control. I'd seen businesses lose their identity after investors got involved, and that wasn't what I wanted for our restaurant. It was our baby, we had built it from the ground up. When Mark and I sat down to talk about the upcoming meeting with Richard, I voiced my concerns. "I just don't want us to lose what makes our place special," I said. "I'm all for growth, but we need to be careful about who we let in."
I could understand where Tom was coming from, but I wasn't as worried. To me, this was a huge opportunity. We'd still be in charge, and the investment would give us the freedom to expand and experiment. "I get it, Tom," I said. "But we can't stay small forever. If we don't grow now, someone else will come along and outpace us. This is our chance." Tom nodded, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. We agreed to meet with Richard, but there was a tension between us that hadn't been there before.
The day of the meeting came, and we met Richard at the restaurant after closing. He was charming, smooth-talking, and clearly knew how to make a deal. He pitched us the idea of a significant investment that would allow us to open not just one, but 2 new locations in the next year. "I love what you guys are doing here," Richard said. "The atmosphere, the food, it's exactly what people want. I want to help you grow, but we'll need to make a few tweaks to streamline things." That's when my gut started to twist. Tweaks? What kind of tweaks? What kind of changes are we talking about? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Richard smiled and said it wouldn't be anything major, just a few adjustments to the menu and the way we operated. But to me, it sounded like we'd be losing control. I glanced at Mark, expecting him to push back, but he seemed to be on board.
Honestly, when Richard started talking about the tweaks, I didn't see the problem. We were already thinking about changing the menu for the new location, and operational changes didn't sound like a big deal. I figured we could make small adjustments without losing what made us unique. That sounds reasonable, I said, glancing at Tom to see if he agreed. Tom didn't say anything at first. He just sat there, looking like he was trying to decide whether to speak up or not.
I was torn. Part of me knew this was a good deal. Richard was offering us the chance to grow in ways we hadn't even considered. But the other part of me couldn't shake the feeling that we were selling out. I didn't want to just be another restaurant chain. I wanted us to keep the soul of our business intact. I think we need to take some time to consider this, I finally said, breaking the silence. Richard seemed taken aback, but he nodded. Mark shot me a look, clearly frustrated.
I couldn't believe Tom had put the brakes on. We had been talking about expansion for months, and now, when the opportunity was right in front of us, he was hesitating. We've been considering this for a while, I said, trying to keep the conversation going. I think we're ready to make a decision. But Tom wasn't budging. He insisted we take the weekend to think it over. Richard agreed, though I could see the disappointment in his eyes. After Richard left, Tom and I had it out.
Why are you so eager to jump into this? I asked. We haven't even thought about what these changes could mean for us. Because this is our chance, Tom. Mark shot back. We can't stay small forever. You're acting like we're going to lose everything, but we're still going to be in charge. We just need to make a few adjustments. A few adjustments that could change everything, I said. I'm not willing to risk that without thinking it through. We went back and forth like that for what felt like hours. Neither of us was willing to back down. By the end of the night, we were both exhausted and frustrated, and nothing had been resolved.
That weekend was tense. Tom and I barely spoke to each other, and I could feel the weight of our decision hanging over us. By Sunday night, I had started to see things from his perspective. Maybe we were rushing into this. Maybe we did need more time to figure out how to protect what we had built. On Monday, we sat down and had a long, honest conversation about what we both wanted. In the end, we decided to meet with Richard again, but this time, we went in with a clearer idea of what we were willing to compromise on and what we weren't.
When we met with Richard again, we were more united. We told him we were interested in the investment, but we weren't willing to make changes that would fundamentally alter what our restaurant was about. Surprisingly, Richard was more understanding than we expected. He agreed to scale back some of his suggestions and leave more control in our hands. It wasn't a perfect deal, but it was one we both felt comfortable with.
Looking back, I'm glad Tom pushed back when he did. If we had jumped into the deal without thinking, we might have ended up losing what made our restaurant special. Now, we're expanding, but we're doing it on our own terms.
What a roller coaster, huh? Mark and Tom's story shows us how easily things can get complicated when communication breaks down. But it also reminds us of the importance of listening to each other's concerns and finding a middle ground. The good part: both Mark and Tom brought something valuable to the table. Mark's ambition and Tom's caution balanced each other out in the end. Together, they found a way to expand without compromising their core values. The downside? They almost lost the opportunity because they weren't on the same page from the start. If Tom had voiced his concerns earlier, or if Mark had asked more questions, they could have avoided a lot of stress. Clear communication is key. That's all for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed Mark and Tom's story and that it gives you something to think about next time you're facing a tough decision. Thanks for tuning in to Weekend Stories. As always, I'm Leo, and I'll be back next week with another story to share. Have a great weekend.